Hello, everyone. Today's talk will be about non-primary person features and the evolution of Romance ternary demonstrative systems. So I will be focusing a lot on demonstrative forms. And by demonstratives, I refer both, I talk about demonstratives as being nominal or adverbial as a disclaimer here. So nominal demonstratives are just adjectives and pronouns, so this and that. And then I call locative or spatial adverbs adverbial demonstratives, so such as here and there. And specifically, I will be focusing on demonstratives in their exophoric function. So when they're used to define the location of a referent in the external world in relation to a didactic center. And the main goals of my talk will be to first show that the ways in which Romance languages encode their didactic center can change in diachrony, and secondly, of course, to try and account for this change. So to do that, I will introduce the patterns of evolution in demonstrative forms, both from a diachronic perspective and in a minor way from a contact perspective. And then I will provide a featural explanation for the reorganization patterns that we observe. And more concretely, I will relate those changes to the merge position of person features and to markedness considerations. But first, I'd like to make a couple of assumptions explicit here very quickly. So first, I assume that at least Romance languages, Romance demonstrative systems are person-oriented. So there is exophoric demonstrative systems have been described as being either person-oriented or distance-oriented, where person-oriented systems are those that locate a referent with respect to one of the speech act participants, so the speaker or the hearer or neither of them. And this we see in Japanese, where we have kore, sore, are, so this near me, that near you, and that far from us. Whereas distance-oriented demonstrative systems have been described as those that locate a referent with respect to the speaker only, but that do define different distance degrees with respect to the speaker. So we have Old English or Scots, we have this, that, and yon. So that is not close to the speaker, but it's crucially closer than something that can be referred to as yon. So even if we assume this dichotomy, which I don't do, but that's not relevant here, Romance languages still belong in most cases actually very clearly to the first group, so the person-oriented systems, I believe. And some evidence for this comes from systems such as Catalan or Portuguese, because a distance-oriented approach here couldn't really capture the relevance of the position of the hearer in the choice of demonstrative form. So if you think of aquest in Catalan, it's this near the participant. So even if it's something not close to me, but just close to my addressee, I'm still going to use the proximal form, so aquest. And even more so, this is the case for Portuguese, where we have esse, which is that near you. So the hearer-related domain is contrastively expressed. Okay, my second assumption, given this, so the person-oriented nature of demonstrative systems, I believe that these are to be defined in terms of person features and not of locative features. And specifically, the person feature system, I assume, is the one put forward by Haber in 2016 with some minor revisions. So basically, we have the person ontology, so what is talked about, that is made up of the discourse-related atoms. So we have the speaker, I, the hearer, you, and the others, O. And how we talk about this? Well, the grammar accesses the ontology by means of two binary features that act on the syntactic locus for person, which is the head pi. The two features are author and participant, and they must each have either a plus value or a minus value. This is because the values correspond to actions, so really set theoretic operations that these features can perform on pi. So the idea is that by performing a specific action on pi, the features derive different subsets of pi. So features then can act on pi either directly or successively, and variations in composition result in different partitions. And to make the thing a bit less abstract, here's what that would correspond to for demonstrative systems. So if no feature, and we're in the first table, composes with pi, then we have just a unary system where pi is taken in its integrity. So we don't have any didactic contrast encoded, we just have one single form, such as in French, ce. Then, if only one feature composes with pi, we have second and third tables. In the first case, it's plus minus participant, and we derive participant-based binary systems, such as the one that I mentioned before for Catalan. And if we have plus minus author, we have a speaker or author-based binary system, such as the one of Italian, that is the same as for English, say. And finally, in Romance languages, we see an additional type of system, the one that I mentioned for Portuguese, where we have a tripartition, so a ternary organization of the demonstrative system, in which plus minus author composes with pi first, and then the result of this composition is the argument of the next functional application, which is by plus minus participant. One last option that we still haven't seen, but that we will get back to later, is given by the reverse ordering of composition. So if plus minus participant composes with pi first and plus minus author only later on. And here we derive this additional form that is the inclusive one. So we have the distinction between something that is only near the speaker, something that is only near the hearer, and something that is near both. So it parallels the inclusive-exclusive distinction in personal pronouns. My last assumption is about the internal structure of demonstratives. So demonstrative forms establish a spatial relation between the referent and a dialectic center, so a person. And this, of course, reminds, at least intuitively, of the semantics of spatial prepositions that also locate a referent, the figure, with respect to a ground. So my last assumption is that the internal structure of demonstrative forms can be modeled along the lines of Svenonius's derivation for the extended PP. And so just as the extended PP would read out something like in front of the tree, I take the internal structure of demonstratives to mean something along the lines of near the speaker or the hearer, whichever the feature or specification is. So near, say, the speaker, in the space of the current discourse atom, so in the space of pi. And here you see that we have this chi. This represents the location relative to pi I take. So it's a slightly different ontology for demonstratives. So we don't take a collection of individuals like in person system, like in pronomial systems, but we take a collection of locations. Okay, so basically what demonstrative forms do is they locate the referent, which will be higher up here, within the vicinity region occupied by one or more of the discourse atoms as defined by the active person features. And the vicinity, so this abstract near function, is defined in terms of vectors. So as the set of vectors that start from the region defined by the structure under here. And so vectors that start from there and point to the vicinity of that region. Okay, so with this in place, let me move on to the patterns of evolution. And as we shall see, whenever ternary systems evolve into binary ones, they uniformly show semantic reduction. In fact, they lose one form in that paradigm. So they have one contrast less. But this crucially comes into two types. So we have, as I said, the speaker-based systems with the near me, not near me semantic opposition. And this is the case, as I said, of Italian. Or we have the participant-based binary systems with the near us, not near us opposition. And this is the case for Catalan. On top of this, we also have morphological variation. So here, these are the resulting systems, right? So the A rows showed that the form of the semantic domain that gets lost is lost as well. Whereas in the B rows, we see that the form that expressed the semantic domain that gets lost is actually reinterpreted, and so it's preserved in the system to the expense of another form from the original paradigm. Okay, so in Diachronic, we see the reduction of ternary systems to speaker-based binary ones, for instance, in Italian. In Italian, Tuscan varieties actually still today show a ternary system in both domains, nominal and adverbial. So we have questo, codesto, and quello, or we have qui, costi, and lì. But crucially, in standard Italian, we do not use the middle form, so codesto and costi, and the hero-oriented term then is lost. It's not there in either series. In Occitan, we see a similar reduction, but this time with a morphological mismatch in the adverbial demonstrative. So while in the nominal domain, the hero-oriented semantics and morphology are equally lost, in the adverbial domain, only the hero-oriented semantics is lost. But its exponent, a key, is reanalyzed as the non-speaker-oriented form. Turning to participant-based binary systems instead, well, we need one preliminary observation here. In fact, in these cases, the original ternary paradigm showed a slightly different semantics than what we've seen, so near me, near you, far from us. And this has been highlighted, for instance, by Ledgway in his studies on the diachrony of the Neapolitan demonstrative system. So concretely, the speaker-oriented term, here is chisto, could be used both to refer to the speaker only, but also it could be used, as Ledgway says, in an inclusive way to refer, so to jointly refer to both speech participants, whereas the hero-oriented term was only used to make specific reference to the hero only when the pragmatic conditions made it extremely necessary. So for this reason, I take actually this system to result from a quadripartition, so with the inverse ordering of operations. So rather than plus minus author, we have plus minus participant first. And although this in synchronic stages of the language is not clear, of course, because it's not overtly visible, because the speaker-oriented term and the inclusive one are always syncretic. And given this, so we still have what on the surface is a ternary system. I take this, I still refer to this as ternary in a sloppy way. So in Neapolitan, as you see, the nominal domain evolves into a participant-based one, a binary one. While in the adverbial domain, we have somewhat more stability, but in other Southern Italo-Romance varieties, instead, we see a reduction such as the one that we've seen before, or the one that we've seen in the nominal demonstrative system in Neapolitan. And again, we can see the mismatch in morphology. So if we compare, Tarantino has qua, whereas Varese has do, so two different forms. And in Catalan, again, the reduction to a participant-based binary system is attested throughout the system. But here we do have a mismatch across the two domains as the one that we saw for Occitan. So while in both cases, the hero-oriented semantics is lost, in the nominal domain, its morphology is lost as well. But in the adverbial domain, its morphology is still in use for the speaker-oriented, for the participant-oriented domain. Okay, so now I turn quickly to some contact data. In fact, my PhD research is embedded in a wider project, a microcontact project that explores syntactic change in contact. So my colleagues and I collected some contact data through fieldwork interviews with both attrited first-generation speakers and heritage speakers of Italo-Romance varieties spoken mostly in the Americas, but we also included Belgium at a later stage. And specifically here, I consider 56 speakers whose homeland varieties show a ternary demonstrative system. And as you can see, it's mainly speakers of Sicilian, of Abruzzese, of Calabrian, so Southern Italo-Romance varieties. And interviews were mostly collected in Argentina, Quebec, and in the United States for this group. To elicit demonstrative data, we designed a picture sentence matching task in which our speakers were asked to match stimuli containing the demonstrative form with pictures representing the different didactic domains. And we also had a semi-guided production task in which we asked our informants to use a demonstrative to describe the location of some pictures that we had with us that we put around in the room in which we had the interview. So by design, we should have elicited 15 items per informant. So for a total of 840 items, but at the end, only 735 could be used for analysis. And also given the fragmentation of our samples, so you've seen we had different dialects, we had different contact languages, we had different generations. And while there were also some other issues, so here I will only be able to show you some descriptive statistics. So as this table here shows, the speaker-related domain and the other related domains, so the non-participant oriented one, are overly stable. but instead the hero-related domain shows quite some variation. So in roughly half, slightly more than half of the cases, we elicited a form with a medial morphology, so neither proximal nor distal, and this is compatible with the retention of a ternary system. But the remaining forms were either morphologically proximal, as in the second table, or morphologically distal, as in the third table. So these systems are these forms would be respectively compatible with binary participant-based system or speaker-based system. Well, here we need more data, of course, to corroborate these findings, but this looks promising, and it looks like we have the same reduction in contact as in Diachronic. So to sum up, we've seen two different patterns for semantic reduction, and we've seen that semantics and morphology don't necessarily align, as one form can still be employed even if its original semantics is lost. And this is the gray tables, the gray cells in the resulting system tables. And this raises a lot of questions. Here I will address how to account for this pattern of reduction, and also why, despite the semantic and morphological variation, do we always lose the hero-related domain? Okay, so first of all, let's have a look at what actually doesn't really account for this. It's not contact, it seems, because we see the same patterns in Diachrony, and I also have some other considerations if you're interested. We can talk about them later on. It doesn't look like it can be frequency, really, because we have mismatches across domains. So we have we will have different semantics used in different ways, which would be a bit weird. Although here I have to say that not many studies are available about the comparative frequencies of these forms in Diachrony and also across domains. So there could be something more there, and it's of course something worth looking at. And it's also, it doesn't look like a postsyntactic mechanism such as, say, impoverishment can account for this, because this clearly has a semantic import. What instead, at least descriptively, can seems to account for the changes that we saw is simply the loss of one feature. So we saw that we have two features in ternary systems, and so we start like this. But if then we lose the last feature to compose with pi high, so respectively plus minus participant and plus minus author, we get exactly the two binary systems that we saw, and we also allow for the morphological variation. And this, of course, begs the question, why would that be the case? So why would we lose a feature to begin with? So my proposal is that this follows from the nature of person features and from structural considerations. So specifically, Harbour's person features denote actions on a lattice. So they are actually functions. They apply to a head, either straightforwardly or through the composition of the other feature to the head. And so this crucially makes the ordering of composition meaningful. And this is in sharp contrast with the traditional predicative features instead, that work more or less as a collection of attributes, so they're commutative. So granting this, my proposal is that primacy of functional application to the pi high head predicts featural stability. So concretely, primary features, so those that apply to the pi head first, are stable, whereas non-primary features, so all those that don't apply, that apply later on, can be unstable. And unstable features are those that can be dropped from the functional sequence altogether, which derives the reductions attested by demonstrative systems, for instance. And to elaborate on this, I will consider some markedness issues that are derivable from the featural definitions that we've seen, and that point single out both ternary systems and specifically the hero-related domain as marked, possibly allowing for their loss in diachrony and in contact alike. So let me start from the observation that the near you domain demonstratives are characterized by the same features that are required by near me or near us and far from me and us, plus an additional feature. So this means that the derivation of near you makes the system sufficient to also derive near me, us, and far from me, us. And on this ground, I take ternary systems to be marked, both because, well, once A, because they contain a marked term, the hero-related one, and B, because to include that term, they need so an extra feature, an extra operation, and that operation would crucially be absolutely unnecessary to the system if that very term were not present. So if we take complexity to be defined in terms of description length, such as more complex descriptions contain more information, while then the definition of ternary systems by means of an additional feature makes them more complex than binary ones. And because of additional complexity, so due to the reiteration of functional applications to pi high, the latest person feature to compose with pi high can be lost, say, so leading to binary systems. And moreover, I take the hero-related domain to be marked in and of itself, and this is because of its featural definition. So here I build on an idea originally put forth by Roberts in 2007. So the idea is that uniform configurations within parameter hierarchies, specifically the setting of parameters, are less marked than non-uniform configurations. And Torcolacci first applied this idea to features, and he focused on phi and tens features and considered non-uniform feature specifications of phi and tens features to be marked. And here I apply this.
5 minutes left, Silvia.
Yes, thank you. And here I apply this metric to the configurations instead instantiated by person feature values. So while the near me and far from us spaces, say, can be defined by uniform values across features, so we have plus plus or minus minus, the near you domain is derived by non-uniform values across features, so we have minus and then plus. So if we take feature values to instantiate different operations, uniform values imply the reiteration of one and the same operation, so either plus or minus on pi high, and that is a monotonic sequence, whereas non-uniform values require two different operations, and this is a non-monotonic sequence. So given third factor principles such as a general monotonicity bias, but also more broadly the idea of input generalization in acquisition, non-uniform configurations can be pointed out for showing a higher level of computational complexity, and this can lead to the loss of the second composition in order to reduce the overall computational load of the form. Note also that originally value uniform forms are preferred when it comes to morphological continuity in reduced paradigms. So we've seen that already for Italian. Here is an example from Latin American Spanish, where, as you can see in this table, only the forms that have uniform values across features are actually preserved in change. And also beyond person features, we see similar effects in the number domain. For instance, the dual category implies the singular and plural one, because singular and plural can be derived just by plus minus atomic, but dual crucially needs an additional feature. And on top of that, dual is derived by non-uniform values across features, so minus and plus. And interestingly, just like the hero-oriented semantics, the dual semantics is the only one that can be lost. I have just a final remark, because this, as is, seems to predict that personal pronouns and possessives should lose second person too, but this is clearly not the case, so this needs to be accounted for. And to do that, I assume that person and number features denote actions on lattices, and this is following Harbour again. And so as such, they are built up syntactically, so one feature, one function at a time under a one feature, one head architecture. And secondly, I also take number features to merge after person features, so ultimately to act on the same functional sequence as person features. So this is an increasing computational load. And so we get the structure that you can see here. So this corresponds to a pronominal paradigm with 3 or 4 persons and 3 or plus numbers. If we lose one of the number features, we are left with the same person system with just 2 numbers. This is the case, say, for English. And if we lose the other number feature, we have a person paradigm that doesn't show any number distinction. And this case is also attested, although it's rarer. We can also lose one person feature, and maybe, I'm not completely sure of this, there is some evidence that some languages might have just a bipartition in a person overall, but that's not quite clear to me. But for sure, what we don't see ever is a is a system with a binary person distinction and a binary number distinction. So with one active person feature and one active number feature. And I take this to be evidence for the idea that non-primary features can be lost, and losing them happens along an implicational hierarchy going inwards. And demonstratives crucially don't show indexical number. So given a marked featural configuration, they can simply lose the person feature, as we've seen. I only know of one demonstrative system that shows an indexical number. This is Siwi-Berber. And as predicted, this system has both person features because it has a ternary person-oriented system. So just to conclude quickly, I show that demonstrative systems across Romance varieties can lose one dyadic opposition in diachrony and in contact alike. And I argue that the attested reduction can be accounted for by featural and structural considerations. So first I took person features to denote actions on lattices, and I capitalized on the ordering of featural applications to, and I translated this as different merge positions. So this derived a difference between primary and non-primary features. And I correlated the merge position of person features with different stability effects. So if extra considerations, markedness consideration kick in. So if we have different values across features, the configuration can be deemed marked, and this might prompt the loss of the non-primary person feature to reduce the amount of overall markedness and complexity of the system. So this is it. Thank you.